Hello, hello, hello. It's Lin-Manuel Miranda. It's Hispanic Heritage Month, and we wanted to have a conversation with a trailblazer for Latinos in the United States who needs really no introduction, but I'm thrilled to get the opportunity to talk to her along with all of you today. Justice Sonia Sotomayor. Thank you, Justice, for joining us today.
Thank you, Lynn, for having me.
You once said, although I am an American, love my country, and could achieve its opportunity of succeeding at anything I worked for, I also have a Latina soul and heart with the magic that carries. Can you explain that magic? How does Latina bring you a sense of pride? How does being Latina bring you a sense of pride? What's one aspect of your culture that you would like to share?
Lynn, I know very few Latinos, even myself who can barely dance, who when I hear our music, my body doesn't start to move. When I hear our love songs, my heart sings with them. And when I smell our food, my stomach does somersaults. That doesn't create magic, but what it creates is an identity. Your identity is the people you grew up with, the values they teach you, the culture they impart, and the importance it has in your heritage. What people you come from, what is the pride that you have in your background? And that Latina identity is such an integral part of who I am. There is no Sonia who's not a Latina. I am made up of so many different parts of all my life experiences, but that is at the center of what my parents taught me, what my family showed me. And so if there's one aspect of my culture that I want to speak about, is our love of family. You know, all cultures are devoted to family. We're not unique in having that characteristic, but we are very unique, I think, in welcoming into our families more than just our immediate fathers and mothers, grandparents and grandkids. We invite everybody who marries into the family, their relatives, everybody. Our extended families are so large that sometimes we forget who's a real aunt or who's a real uncle. They've been adopted, so many of them. And that, to me, that sense of family is what carries me through life. I live my life looking for family. And that's the part of my culture, not looking for because I have it, but experiencing it with everyone that I share treasured moments with. And that part of being a Latina, I take a great deal of pride in.
100% co-sign from me. I'm still discovering tios and titis that I did not realize were actually tios and titis. In grade school, you were known to say that your dream was to be a judge. Now, as one, you've used your voice as a children's author, writing the books Turning Pages, My Life Story, and Just Ask, Be Different, Be Brave, Be You. Why did you want to be a judge when you were young? And why is it a career and position of leadership other kids should aspire to?
You know, not everybody has athletic ability, like Lori Hernandez, the gymnast. Not everyone can sing and dance the way Jennifer Lopez can. We are all different. We have different skills, different talents, different abilities. And each of us has to find our passion. We have to find that thing that really excites us, number one. But number two, that we have some ability to do and some talent to do. And I had a sense very early on in life that I really wanted to do something that helped people. Not on a one-to-one necessarily. So I didn't want to be a doctor like my brother ultimately became. I didn't want to become a teacher, although I really admire teachers. They help people learn. Doctors help fix people who are sick. But I wanted to help people's relationships. I wanted to help how people got along with one another. And that's what the law is about. It's figuring out how we share this world together, how we live in it together, and try to resolve our differences when they exist and when they create conflict. And that's what lawyers do, help people in those situations. And I understood that by listening, by thinking out what those problems were, and understanding what the law was, that I could make a difference in people's lives. So that's how I ended up first wanting to be a lawyer, and then ultimately a judge. And you'll ask me why a judge, and my reason was very simple. I got to be the final word on what the answer was under the law. And that I thought was a pretty important place to be in life. And right now, why should kids aspire to do that? Well, I'm one of 9 voices on the Supreme Court. I have a job for life, for life for as long as I want it, until the day I depart. And I get to be a voice in a room that decides some of the most important questions, legal questions, not just in the United States, but in the world. And to me, it's not the fame of an actress or an athlete, but it's important work. It's meaningful work. And so what I want kids to take away from what I'm speaking about is those of you who are drawn to the law, become lawyers, become judges. We need more of it. But if that's not where your strengths are, just have a passion about something and become what excites you.
Well put. In 2002, you stated that there's a long way to go in terms of Latino representation in the courts. How do you feel about that representation today, almost 20 years later? You're a Latina in a very male, white-dominated profession. As a Latino in a very male, white-dominated profession, I'm in there with you, surrounded by history, works, and laws also created by those same individuals. What does your presence mean in that space amongst those people, for them, for America, and for yourself?
Well, when I started out in 1979 as a young lawyer, there were no Latinos on the Supreme Court. There were no Latinos on the highest court of New York State, where I grew up. There were very few judges, both in the federal system, women at all, but Latinos less, in the federal system or in the state systems. That has changed. We are represented now in the federal court in more numbers. We're on the Supreme Court. We have Latinos on the Court of Appeals and on the circuit and on the district courts in the federal system. And we have Latinos throughout all of the states in judicial position. But our numbers are still relatively small. We have a long way to go. And a long way before our numbers match our presence in the population. And so, yes, we've come a long way, but no, we haven't come far enough. And for me, during my nomination process, at one point, I became disenchanted with the process. I was being attacked, told I wasn't smart enough, that I was nasty to people, something that took me by surprise because I take a great deal of pride in trying to be nice to people. And the attacks were getting to me. And at one point, I was actually seriously considering, why should I subject myself to this torture? I should just pull out. I have a great job. I love my job in New York. Why should I take on this big headache? And a dear friend of mine, an otra puertorriqueña, heard about what I was thinking, came to me and said, Sonia, get over yourself. This is not about you. This is about Elisa, my young daughter. She needs to see a person like you on the highest court of the land, so she can know that everything is possible for her. Without you there, there's no real proof of it. And so that's why us achieving great things, whether it's positions of importance or dominance in our fields like you as a composer, singer, writer, actor, all of those accomplishments mean something to kids who are growing up and who don't know whether dreaming big is something that is possible for them, not just to dream, but to achieve. And so that's what those numbers mean to me.
100%. I share that feeling of you push open the door because something in you needs to push open the door, and then you look behind you and realize a lot of other people now understand that's possible because you blaze that trail. I don't think I'm saying anything controversial in saying that these are troubling times for our democracy. As someone who has devoted most of your career to public service, are you concerned? Like, how do you think we got to here?
I am deeply concerned. Our democracy is in deep peril. You know, when the Constitutional Convention finished, Ben Franklin was approached by a woman who asked him, what sort of government do we have? And he famously responded, a republic, madam, if you can keep it. Now today, one study reports that 30% of Americans don't think that democracy is important. That's a staggering figure. Add to it 43% of young Americans who don't believe the Constitution is relevant today. Another terrifying figure. My colleague, Sandra Day O'Connor, once said that civic education is not in the genes. You have to teach it and you have to learn it. And she's right. And we've done a horrible job in schools in teaching education. Now there's a lot of causes to our current partisan divide and to the current state of peril to our democracy. But the lack of real investment in civic education, to me, is one of the greatest causes of this problem. For STEM teaching, which are the sciences and math, classes of that nature, we spend $50 per student. On civic education, we spend 5 cents per student. That's a tremendous divide. How do we intend to keep our democracy if kids don't really know what it means? And its importance in protecting not just our liberties, but their own futures. And not only does civic education help our democracy, it also helps students themselves. You know, there's countless studies that show that students who are involved in civic participation do better in school, more of them graduate from high school and go on to college, more of them graduate from college, and more of them have more professional and successful lives. Civic education helps everybody, yourself and the community you live in. And for me, that peril to our democracy can only be cured if we invest in teaching kids about its importance.
That brings me to my next question, which is you have a new book coming out in January 22 called Just Help, How to Build a Better World. I understand it's about civic participation by children. There's been a lot of discussion recently about the growing number and influence of the Latinx community in America at a time when we are wrestling with so many critical issues of equity and justice as a nation. What do you see as the opportunities and barriers for the Latino community to harness this convergence to advocate for a more just society?
Well, Lynn, we've got to start with one understanding, or one common perspective, which is Latinos are different. We're not a heterogeneous or homogeneous, we're a heterogeneous, not a homogeneous population. We're different. We have different political views. We have different religious views. We don't speak in one voice. So is that a barrier? No. But it is a factor we have to recognize in understanding that as a community, all of us, no matter whatever our differences are, have one institutional demand, and that is that we participate. We have to vote. We have to make our voices heard. In 2020, it's pretty well known that we had a significant impact on the election. We can't let that become a one-shot deal. We have to continue to participate. And that means not just in voter turnout on the day of elections, but in voter registration, in people understanding the need for our active service in terms of voting. But the other thing we have to do is we have to get more people on the ballot. We need more representatives from all of our cultures in the political process. We need more educated Latinos. It is very, very scary to me that we still are among the highest high school dropout rate among all ethnic cultures. We compete for bottom place with American Indians. Now, how can we grow the strength of our community if our kids are dropping out from high school? That's a significant institutional problem we have to address. We have to find ways to equalize access to education, to equalize participation across economic stratas in our community. We have a lot to do to maintain our impact. And so for me, my carrying call when I speak to Latino groups is, don't ask me how I feel about things. You tell me how you feel about laws. And then tell me what you're doing to change the ones you don't like. Because that's really what the answer is, isn't it? That we take control of our own futures and take action in making change.
What advice would you give to young people, particularly young Latinos and Latinas who want to make a difference, but may doubt their ability to influence our large and complex system of government?
Well, first you got to learn about it. I've said that already. You can't change something you don't know. It's big, but it is understandable, number one. Number two, not one person makes changes. Not one person creates a new system. It takes the work of groups who unite in goals and figure out what changes the group needs. And so a young Latino or Latina is not alone in affecting change. That's what civic participation is. It's working together with your community to change things. And so for any young Latino out there who doubts that they can do it, look at the story of Alexander Hamilton and the lessons he taught about how an immigrant to the United States, an orphan, could become a hero. And look how a kid from the projects in New York City, myself, could end up on the Supreme Court. We do it by hard work. We do it by educating ourselves. And we do it by believing in ourselves. Truly believing that we can do it.
The population of Latino identifying Americans rises every year. We've just had the new census results in, and understanding fully that that is far from a monolith in terms of the cultures that fall under this heading. What do you see as the future for Latinos in this country in representation, protection, in a more understanding and appreciation for Latino culture?
Oh, I mean, there's no question in my mind that our influence is just not political. Our influence is growing across all sorts of fields, whether it's in athletic fields or entertainment fields, or in just every aspect of our society. There are more commercials that are Spanglish now. It really tells you something about how others are looking at our importance as a community. These are things that are critical to the brightness of our future, but it all depends on whether we have the heart. Are we going to do it for ourselves? If we don't, it won't be handed to us. And so for me, the answer always remains, what will we do to make those changes?
We would be remiss if this is a Ham4Progress. This is a Hamilton-related site, so we've got a lot of Hamilton fans watching. So we have to have one Hamilton question, which is, who is your favorite character in Hamilton and why? And also, what would you like to be your legacy after your time, as the song goes?
Well, Lynn, my favorite character is Hamilton himself. The first time I saw the show, you were playing Hamilton, and I just loved it. But I mentioned earlier that Hamilton epitomizes what I believe are the important qualities of life. Remember the line in your own song where on his island people set up a collection to send them to the mainland? And what did they tell him? Get an education. And don't forget whence you came from. The world will know your name. That's what I did. That's what Hamilton did. That's what you have done. If you read through the lines of the Hamilton song, he put a pencil to his temple and connected it to his brain.
What was to see myself that you're quoting the show?
Yeah, I'm quoting you. But these are just fabulous lines. He read every treatise on the show. That's what you have to do. You got to really study. And then you have to really, really work hard. And that's what I hope my legacy will be. Every kid who, when my life ends, can say, she made a difference in inspiring me to want to study, in inspiring me to make a difference in the world. If that child keeps that memory alive, I will be alive as long as that child is in the world. And I want a whole school of them doing that. That's why I reach out to kids as much as I do, because I really believe it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed. I don't know if you saw the In the Heights film, but we did do a shout out and a mural to you in the film.
You did? I was really touched. I will tell you that everybody I know called me or emailed me.
I think some people still have a misconception that civic education is about memorizing dates and names from a textbook, that it's not relevant or engaging. to young people, though not the young people watching this, they're Hamilton fans. But that's not what you're talking about. Tell me more about your vision of great civic education.
Well, Lynn, first of all, it's Hamilton. That is the greatest civic education medium that anyone has thought of in the last century. Kids have learned about our founding fathers through Hamilton, and every one of them has memorized most of your lyrics. It's really amazing to see. Sandra Day O'Connor, when she left being a Supreme Court justice, when she retired, she took up civic education to middle schoolers as one of her priorities in life. And she started an organization called ICivics.org. And ICivics teaches students civics education through video games. And the games are free. They're on the computer. You just get them off the internet. And to play the games to learn about civics, about your country, about your government, and what your rights are. One of kids' favorite games is, I should say, do I have a right? And you get to play a lawyer and explain to a client whether he or she has a right for a problem that they're presenting to you. The games are fun, they're engaging. There are so many ways today that you can learn about government that don't require memorization, that don't require just reading in books. The essence of civic education is participation. It's doing something. So as you're learning, your teachers will be drawing you out and engaging you in ways to do something and make a change. In an after-school program that I visited not so long ago in the Bronx, the kids noticed that the butcher store across the street from their center threw out their carcasses at the end of the evening. And the carcasses invited a lot of flies and a lot of rodents. And it was horrible to walk by the store. It gave a horrible smell to the whole area. Well, what the kids did was figure out a way to petition the sanitation department, the health department, a bunch of different departments in New York. And they finally figured out that someone just needed to give the butcher a locked container where they could put the carcasses in at night. And the sanitation department would have a code to open the container and remove it in the morning. That solved the problem. Now, it took civic participation, going to all those agencies and getting them to work together to solve that little problem, but it had a huge impact on that neighborhood. So you don't need to change the world in big ways. You can do it in little ways too, but you have to want to do something. But you don't remember when we first met. It was when you were in high school. Marisol Shapiro Rosa is a very dear friend of mine.
Oh my goodness.
With you, and I would go to see all her shows. And so in one of those, you weren't acting with her, but you were in the audience for whatever reason.
Was it West Side Story?
I think it might have been.
You saw my production of West Side Story? I directed Marisol.
What am I telling you? That's when we first met. You just don't remember.
That Sotomayor saw my high school production of West Side Story.
It worked. Now we're going to see the new one.
No, I wasn't in it, but that I'm so proud of.
Well, obviously, I knew your dad in those days.
Right.
I was involved in the Latino community in New York. But Marisol's mom, Margarita Rosa, was also quite involved in state politics. So it's a smaller world than you remember.
Yes, that's my mind is blown for the day.